he's really a closet right-winger thing. But
I don't think he's closeted at all. I think he's very much out about his right-wing views.
But the double standard here is that because he's a black man and, with respect to your thesis, perceived as being on the left,
sure,
he can talk about Jews If I talked about Jews feminizing black men by putting chemicals in the marijuana, I'd be off Facebook, boom, like that. First, for suggesting that it's possible to feminize black men, and it's possible and that black men are on marijuana, and that Jews are trying to feminize. I mean, that's circles within circles. I'd be gone instantly.
Now, perhaps, I think that the fundamental thing that we have to think about is that Facebook, Google, Twitter, they are privately owned companies. If they believe that someone has violated their terms and conditions of use, then they can remove them. I would suggest if you have an issue with Farrakhan being on that platform, then you should, like you said, write letters, write emails, and then I guarantee you with enough economic pressure, they will probably remove the video or remove that person.
I think we're beyond economic pressure now. A third of the population of the planet, 2.5 billion people, are on Facebook. That makes them bigger than any sovereign state. You can't really say they're just a private company, Jason. I mean, they're more powerful than the government of Belgium.
Yeah, but at the same time, I would certainly not make the argument that Facebook owes anyone their platform. We know who the guy at the top is. He has the right to set the terms and conditions of the use of Facebook. He felt that someone, like Alex Jones is someone who violated those terms. And I would actually argue that Alex Jones and his reach is much larger than that of Minister Farrakhan. So I think, and his influence. So I think that this is one of the things that we have to take into account is the reach and the influence of the person that we're talking about.
Okay, Jason, thank you very much for that, Professor. And despite the best efforts of Louis Farrakhan, you're an unfeminized black man. Not that there's anything wrong with if you were being feminized or anything. Okay, that's the end of my career. An accused extremist Muslim has been arrested in New Mexico after allegedly trying to turn a compound into a terrorist training camp for children. That story's up next. Authorities say an extremist Muslim male held 11 children at his compound in the New Mexico desert and was training them to become school shooters. Trace Gallagher has more. Trace?
Mark, what initially appeared to be a case of extreme child abuse is now turning into a lot more. Last week, police in New Mexico got a text message from an unknown source saying, quote, "We're starving, need food and water." Police then set up surveillance on a makeshift compound near the New Mexico-Colorado border. Watch.
That was the breaking point where I thought we finally had enough probable cause to put in an affidavit for a search warrant and present it to a district judge.
Yeah, the warrant was then granted, and when SWAT teams moved in, they found 11 children ages 1 to 15, malnourished, dressed in rags, living in squalor. But they also found an AR-15 rifle, 4 guns, and dozens of rounds of ammunition. 5 adults were arrested, 2 men and 3 women. And now court documents show that all 5 suspects are accused of training children to commit school shootings. Quote, "The defendant transported children across state lines for the purpose of the children receiving advanced weapons training to commit future acts of violence." But authorities initially locked onto the cabin as part of a search for a missing Georgia boy with severe medical problems. 4-year-old Abdul Wahaj was allegedly abducted 9 months ago by his father, Suraj Wahaj, because the dad believed his son was possessed by the devil and planned to perform an exorcism, when in fact the boy had epilepsy. The father, Suraj Wahaj, was among the 5 adults arrested, and other children rescued at the compound say at one time 4-year-old Abdul was at the compound, though all police found were the remains of a small child. And we should note the father, Suraj Wahaj, is the son of a radical Islamic cleric who, according to Senate testimony, is an unindicted co-conspirator in the 1993 World Trade Center bombing. By the way, the 11 children taken from the compound are now in protective custody. Mark.
Thanks, Trace. Amazing it all goes back to that World Trade Center bombing 25 years ago. We'll have more on this disturbing case out of New Mexico tomorrow evening on Tucker Carlson Tonight. But that is it for us tonight. Thanks for joining us. Never fear, the man is here. Sean Hannity has a great opening monologue. Go get him, Sean.
All right, Mark, thank you. And a lot of news tonight. Welcome to Hannity. Yes, tonight, 448 days into Mueller's seemingly never-ending witch hunt. But now, with just 90 days to go into what I am calling the single most important midterm of our lifetime, well, there could actually be a light at the end of the tunnel. Earlier today, President Trump's attorney rejected interview terms from Team Mueller, and rightfully so. We'll explain. Now, this to me is an obvious perjury trap being set by partisan investigators. In moments, Rudy Giuliani, the president's attorney, will be here with reaction. And also tonight, more major breaking news surrounding the deep state go-between, Bruce Ohr, how the plot thickens tonight, even much more than before, and the Hill's John Solomon unearthed text showing that former foreign spy Christopher Steele desperately trying to infiltrate and actually influence Mueller's ongoing investigation. New information. He actually used Bruce Ohr's connections to Christopher Steele. This is so much worse than we have known up to this point. We'll explain all of that coming up, and new developments surrounding WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange. Will he finally be interviewed here in the U.S. about the 2016 election hacking, and what evidence might he have? All of that, plus we cover the president's tough new sanctions against Russia. Oh, I thought he was compromised. And, of course, Comrade de Blasio, the mayor of New York City, he has a beef apparently with us here at Fox News. And it's day 7 of Paul Manafort's trial of the century, and a bizarre, horrifying story about a recently arrested Islamic extremist in New Mexico. Another story out of Pennsylvania. All right, busy night, busy news night, a lot to get into. Stay tuned. It's time for our breaking news opening monologue. All right, we're going to start. We're going to go very slow tonight because a lot of new information. Robert Mueller, his team of partisan investigators, they want to face off with the President of the United States. But today, President Trump's attorneys flatly rejected, rightly so, Mueller's interview terms. They have countered with a proposal of their own. In a statement, the attorney for President Trump, former New York City Mayor Rudy Giuliani, wrote, "We are restating what we have been saying for months. It is time for the Office of the Special Counsel to conclude its inquiry without further delay. Now, the former mayor is now predicting that the investigation could be over by September the 1st. He'll be right here on this show with more details in just a few moments. Without a doubt, President Trump should be aware. Now, Mueller, his merry band of anti-Trump deep state sycophants, Hillary Clinton, Obama, Democratic donors, what's happening here, we all pretty much agree on. They are laying a perjury trap for the President of the United States. Mueller should not get what he wants. The President, his attorney, should not give in. The President should not sit down for an interview. Now, tonight we have yet another example of just how corrupt and how flawed Mueller's witch hunt really is. According to a shocking new report tonight from the Hill's John Solomon, Christopher Steele, remember him, the former foreign spy responsible for the Clinton bought and paid for dossier? Oh, we now know he was also paid by your FBI, your dollars, under Jim Comey. Well, they were desperately trying to influence the ongoing counsel with the hunt into so-called Russian collusion. And it gets worse. Bruce Ohr, the fourth highest ranking member of the DOJ, was trying to help Christopher Steele do it. This is months after Steele was fired for leaking. He got 11 payments from the FBI. On July 16, 2016, before the election, Steele wrote to Ohr, quote, "I spoke to my old colleagues last week. They assured me they would not stand in the way of our re-engagement with the Bureau." Ohr texted back, "I will pass along to my colleagues, thanks." And on November 18th, after the election, Trump won. Now, Mueller's witch hunt, by the way, was now underway. Steele writing, quote, "I am presuming you've heard nothing back from your special counsel colleagues on the issues you kindly put to them from me." And then Steele goes on to say this is disappointing would be an understatement. Certain people have been willing to risk everything to engage with them in an effort to help them reach the truth. Now, yeah, right, just like there's truth in that phony, unverified, uncorroborated, debunked dossier that the Clinton campaign used to smear then candidate Donald Trump, the same Russian lies that were used before the election as the foundation for the Mueller witch hunt and the op research used to mislead a FISA court on 4, not 1, but 4 separate occasions, 4 judges, so the government literally can spy on an opposition party candidate and a Trump campaign associate. And meanwhile, according to a brand new report from our own Sarah Carter, a post-election 2016 handwritten document from Bruce Ohr listing the names of Strzok and Page and others in the FBI is also raising questions tonight about the extent of Ohr's communications with the Bureau. And according to some other newly unearthed texts tonight, we're also learning that Steele was concerned about the U.S. Senate's inquiry into the dirty dossier, probably because the contents were full of Russian lies and outright propaganda. And by the way, he even said so himself in an interrogatory in England. He said it's raw intelligence. I have no idea if this is true, maybe 50-50. Really? Not only did he peddle his Clinton and FBI bought and paid for lies to you, the American people, to sway an election, the bulk of that information that is false, Russian lies, to get a FISA warrant as top officials, as I said, 4 separate times lied to FISA court judges to spy on an opposition party candidate. Then he turns around and tries to peddle his lies through Bruce Ohr. Remember, his wife, Nellie, well, she helped build the lies for Fusion GPS, the dossier. What did they do with it? They wanted to get it to Mueller post-election to destroy President Trump after the fact that they lost. They tried to influence the election. It didn't work. Then they tried to destroy the president. It is a national, disgusting, despicable disgrace, the biggest abuse of power by the top DOJ and FBI officials in this country. By the way, not rank and file. And according to Solomon's report, we'll go back to that, these communications between Bruce Ohr and Christopher Steele, they were going on until late November 2017. Well, that's more than a year after the FBI supposedly, officially cut off all ties with Steele because he was leaking and lying about potentially classified information to the media, again, to peddle his lies, to influence the outcome of our election. Now, this all comes on the heels of last night's shocking report that showed that Christopher Steele was working closely with Bruce Ohr before and after the 2016 election, again, to spread the lies from Steele's dirty dossier. He had no faith in those lies throughout the highest levels of what is supposed to be our fair and unbiased justice system. equal justice under the law, equal applications of the law. Now, at the time, or again, the fourth highest ranking member of Obama's Department of Justice. However, he's since been demoted because of his unethical ties to Steele and Fusion GPS. Now, Sarah Carter, John Solomon, they will be joining us in a moment with more details. These are shocking new developments. It is far worse than we ever thought. But first, we are also currently tracking another investigation into election hacking. Now, according to WikiLeaks, the Senate Intel Committee has now requested to interview WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange. Now, Senator Burr's office has not confirmed the request, but if this is true, it's about time. After all, remember, WikiLeaks, they were the ones that actually released those hacked emails. And unlike so many other so-called journalists here in America, we actually took the time. We went to England, we sat down, and we interviewed Julian Assange right here on the show and on my radio show. And he said to us then, no government actor was involved in the hacking. You might remember. Take a look. Did Russia give you this information or anybody associated with Russia?
Our source is not a state party. So the answer for our interactions is no.
You did not get this information about the DNC, John Podesta's emails. Can you tell the American people 1,000% you did not get it from Russia or anybody associated with Russia?
We can say, we have said repeatedly over the last 2 months that our source is not the Russian government and it is not a state party.
Now, I would assume he knows where he got it and probably has the proof. So let's let this country see where WikiLeaks got the information from. We're going to keep you posted when or if the Senate Intel does, in fact, interview Julian Assange. And by the way, the House, they need to do the same thing. The American people, you deserve the truth. But tonight, regardless of what you think about WikiLeaks, it's irrelevant. We know one thing for certain. President Trump in no way colluded with Russia. And instead, the president has been extremely tough on Vladimir Putin's hostile regime. And today we have one more example. Tough new U.S. sanctions levied against Russia in response to an assassination attempt of a former British spy conducted with chemical or biological weapons. Now, these new sanctions will be applied to all Russian state-owned businesses and will reportedly affect 70% of the Russian economy. Gee. I thought the president was compromised by Putin. That's what fake news tells us, or NBC News suggesting he might actually be a Russian agent. President Trump. Now, while the president makes serious policy decisions, and as he's conducting consequential peace through strength diplomacy, well, many on the far left, they are obsessing over ICE, the U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement Agency. Now, as part of their grand plan to get open borders, many on the left want to band together and ban ICE altogether. Earlier this week, we sent Tomi Lahren to Portland, Oregon, to interview some of these anti-ICE activists. It's a small portion. Take a look.
I don't know if you've seen in the last couple of weeks, but your city's been kind of home to some protesting, some controversy, a lot of surrounding your mayor and the Occupy ICE movement.
Right.
Are you familiar with any of that?
Yes.
What do you think about it?
I think that they should be able to protest.
I don't know if they need to be abolished, but I think we need to look seriously at the policies that are being practiced at the moment.
Fox News? Yeah, you're a too.
But I'm nice.
Doesn't matter.
My name's Tommy.
Don't care.
You just don't like Fox News?
No, because Fox News is nothing but a bunch of capitalist lies.
Well, she found a fan. Stay tuned. We're going to have Tommy's full coverage coming up. You're not going to believe how out of touch with reality some of these people really are. All right, now let's return to the horrific breaking story out of New Mexico. A father of a missing disabled 3-year-old son has been arrested at a squalid camp that's linked to Islamic extremists. Now, during his arrest, 11 children were found on this compound where it is believed weapons training was conducted. Now, with plans, of course, to use the children in future school shootings. The individual arrested was the son of a Brooklyn imam who was named as an unindicted co-conspirator in the 1993 World Trade Center attack. Now, sadly, the remains of the young child were also found on this compound. A scary, tragic story will continue to follow. And we also have another topic to get to, and it comes to us right here in New York City. Sorry, I pay high taxes. I'm stuck here. Far-left mayor, Comrade Bill de Blasio, has a new favorite villain. They're looking at it right now. That's right. During a recent interview, Comrade de Blasio blamed Fox News for dividing America. He tells The Guardian, quote, if you could remove News Corp from the last 25 years of American history, we would be in an entirely different place. Yeah, that's true. We'd only have one opinion on the news from the far left, a universal opinion, because they're all a bunch of sheep, a utopian dream for Comrade de Blasio. And like a true left-wing extremist, well, Comrade de Blasio detests diversity of thought. That's not good. Imagine 30 years without Rush. Oh, let's see, 30 years without talk radio, 23 years without Fox News. All right, finally tonight, our last topic covers day 7 of the trial of the century, the 2005 tax and bank fraud charges against Paul Manafort. Remember, no collusion, has nothing to do with Donald Trump, nothing to do with the campaign, nothing to do with Russia. And while Team Mueller is embarrassing themselves in their attempt to put the screws on Manafort, as Judge Ellis said, to get him sing or to compose against President Trump so they can impeach or prosecute him, well, it's Mueller's prosecutors who are actually feeling the heat from the presiding judge, T.S. Ellis III. Yesterday, Judge Ellis berated Mueller's legal team and even accused one prosecutor of being such a tough guy he was tearing up like a little crybaby. Today, Judge Ellis reportedly urged the prosecution to, quote, focus sharply, speed up the pace of the trial, saying, quote, judges should be patient. They made a mistake when they confirmed me. And meanwhile, Manafort's attorneys once again called out what is the questionable character of the star witness, Rick Gates, pointing out that he had up to 4 extramarital affairs on top of, embezzlement, lying, extortion, and could have faced, if he didn't get the get out of jail free card from Mueller, could have faced 290 years in jail. Wow. Offer 290 years in jail or say something about this guy. I think I'll take the jail. I don't think so. Now, as always, we'll continue to update you in this trial conducted by Mueller's team of witch hunters. This has absolutely zero to do with Russia. Nothing to do with collusion, nothing to do with the campaign, nothing to do with Trump. 2005. Put the screws to him so he sings or composes. All right, back to our breaking news story tonight. Joining us from the Hill, John Solomon and Fox News investigative reporter, contributor Sarah Carter. John, we'll begin with you. Let's talk about this new development. This is massive tonight. Put a lot of emphasis. Go slow. It gets complicated.
Yeah, no, it is. I think the bottom line is simple, though. Months after Christopher Steele was discredited and terminated by the FBI because he leaked to the media a major violation of human source intelligence rules, there was an effort underway by him with his buddy, Bruce Ohr, at that time a top deputy to Rod Rosenstein, to try to get him back into the FBI's good graces and to possibly get him working, re-engaged, it says, is the word used in these emails, with special counsel Mueller. Now, it doesn't appear in these things that we can prove they ever got to Mueller, but the mere fact that a senior Justice Department official was trying to get a discredited partisan intelligence source back onto the case tells you all you need to know about this case. This is not the way counterintelligence is normally done in the FBI. Career people vet sources carefully. They manage them carefully. They double and triple check their authenticity and their accuracy. Here, we turned a blind eye to their partisanship, to their inaccuracy in their documents, and we're still trying to get them in the investigation a year later. That is what's wrong with this FBI investigation. And this episode is one of the strongest parts. The FBI is talking to Ohr. They know this is going on. Someone has to come clean in the FBI and describe.
Let's slow it down.
Yeah.
So not only did Hillary and the DNC pay Ohr, 11 payments by the FBI to Ohr. He's fired.
So not for this case. That's important to note. Those payments are not for this case. They're for other work he did.
Understood. But he's still paying a guy. You know, money came from him. Understood.
That's right.
Steele now hates Trump like Strzok and Page, correct?
He does. He does.
Steele even admits under oath in Great Britain, I have no idea if this is true. This is raw intelligence because he was risking perjury. So he tries to get Trump. The American people were fed by him. Hillary paid for it. Lies because they wanted to influence the American people with Russian lies that she paid for, correct?
Yes, there's no doubt. And After the president, this is an important point. Go ahead. Go ahead.
And then after the election, they're trying to drag him back in through the fourth highest ranking Justice Department official, whose wife, incidentally, we know she worked for Fusion GPS, but we believe on the phony Russian dossier. And they're trying to bring him back because after Trump won and his dossier lies didn't work, then they were trying to take out the president with more Russian lies, correct?
The only reason to bring Christopher Steele back into the investigation that we can see in these documents is to sustain an inaccurate narrative in the public domain that they had this extraordinary evidence against President Trump that he was colluding with Russia. And as you know, James Comey said it wasn't there. No one's presented it since that time of any evidence that the president colluded with Russia. It was a political effort, not a counterintelligence effort.
Sarah, your report is also blockbuster tonight, that they're literally these documents that we now have written by Orr 2 weeks after the 2016 election. Remember, those documents were designed to defeat Trump. It didn't work. But now they're going back. Now they're trying to use a post-election. Notes from Strzok and Page have many lawmakers and investigators and other documents. FBI had a back-channel investigation they never revealed. Tell us what you found.
Well, they never revealed it to the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court, and this is essential, Sean, because they violated it. They withheld exculpatory evidence that the judges should have known about. Also, the documents reveal something very important. These are law enforcement sensitive documents. These are memos written by Bruce Orr himself. And on November 21st, he apparently either met with or spoke with Lisa Page. Remember, she's the general counsel for former Deputy Director Andrew McCabe. She also with Peter Strzok, her paramour, lover. And so when you look at all of this, and Joe Pientka, who was an FBI agent, was the same one that interviewed General Michael Flynn with Peter Strzok. This is so important because in that note to himself, basically that memorandum, he also mentioned Paul Manafort, that they were moving forward against Paul Manafort. And that's essential here because he couldn't move forward against Trump. They could move forward against Manafort. But he did note, I would contact Christopher Steele. He basically noted to himself to contact Steele. So what was he doing with Lisa Page, Peter Strzok, and Joe Pientka? What was this DOJ official doing, and why was this not disclosed to the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court? I think those are the most essential questions that need to be answered.
Okay, now let's explain in your words, Sarah, then we'll give John a chance. Explain in your words what this was all about. In other words, there were the top people at the FBI. We can go to Comey, we can go to the deputy FBI director who's been fired and may ultimately end up indicted. And then we've got Strzok, and then we got Page, and then we got all of this going on. Now Bruce Orr and Nellie Orr, they seem to be much more involved than we knew up until this point. Explain how this was all about defeating Trump and then destroying Trump.
That was it, Sean. This was about either destroying Trump before he could be, the president of the United States, ruining him before there was even an opportunity. And if he did become president, which he did, taking down a duly elected president. That was what they were working for. That is what they continued to do. And that is what they were semi-successful at, because what they got, the end result, Comey got it when they appointed special counsel Robert Mueller, based on this evidence. And they also got it with the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court.
And Steele was trying to get to Mueller through Bruce Orr.
That's absolutely correct.
Now, according to both of you, you're both telling me there's still a lot more to come. John, you're shaking your head. So did they get to Mueller? And the fact, it seems like they connected based on these emails we have.
Yeah, I don't want to go that far. I think the FBI was receiving information during the time Special Counsel Mueller is in charge of the investigation from Steele. It is not clear that Peter Strzok or the other FBI agents told that to Mueller. We know Peter Strzok had interviews as late as the summer of 2017 with the FBI or getting Steele's information. So it definitely made it into Mueller's investigation.
All right. I'm just out of time. Thank you both. We're going to have you both tomorrow because there's more new information coming. Tick-tock. Up next, a Hannity exclusive with President Trump's attorney, Rudy Giuliani, also Alan Dershowitz, and so much more straight ahead. right, joining us now in studio, responding to all this breaking news, is President Trump's attorney, Rudy Giuliani. Mr. Mayor, good to see you, sir. How are you?
Good to see you.
All right, let's start with tonight's breaking news. So you got Orr, Steele, Nellie Orr, you got Russian lies.
Can it get any worse? I mean, what do we need to know that this is a totally illegitimate investigation based on a report, a dossier that was paid for by Hillary Clinton and the Democrats? Probably the biggest illegality so far, the biggest collusion so far.
Or conspiracy.
Completely made up, led to nothing except several fraudulent Pfizer wires. And now we have Mueller, who doesn't seem to care that he's sitting on top of a totally illegitimate investigation.
But the thing about the dossier that she paid for and the fact that the FBI paid Steele, it was designed to misinform the American people with Russian lies to influence the election.
Yes.
There's a great irony here. If it wasn't,
well, maybe if Mueller and his band of whatever they are, Democrats, right, were fair-minded, maybe they'd investigate. Maybe that's the collusion. Did
you ever hear the Adam Schiff tape that we played?
Yes.
Adam Schiff, he's just dying to get naked pictures of Trump with a Russian on tape. There's your evidence, Mueller. You can't make it up. I mean, if it wasn't so serious, not only did they try to lie to the American people with Russian lies, now we know after the election they tried to destroy the president with lies, and now they're connected to Mueller, perhaps?
Yeah, I've never been involved in an investigation on either side that's more illegitimate than this one, that is so obviously more illegitimate. And I wonder, where's the sense of justice on the part of Mueller, on the part of the Justice Department? After all, the Justice Department, this is a Justice Department investigation. He's working for Rosenstein. And at some point, you got to say the irregularities, the unethical conduct,
double standard,
the way in which people who hate Trump were put into primary positions of power, that has completely tainted this investigation.
It's a family from law enforcement. My mom was a prison guard. You know, my dad, New York City, family court probation. So many cops in my family, FBI agents. I cannot believe this is such a. The rank and file are so good. Here's the thing: you responded today to Mueller's latest request, and you think this could be over by September. Let's start with the request.
Well, I think if it isn't over by September, then we have a very, very serious violation of the Justice Department rules that you shouldn't be conducting one of these investigations in the 60-day period. Look, he's got plenty of time to either decide. We offered him an opportunity to do a form of questioning. He can say yes or no. We can do it. If he doesn't want to do it, he knows the answers to every question that he wants to ask. He's going to ask him, did you tell Comey to go easy on Flynn? The president's going to say, no, I didn't. Hey, Bob, you know it. Why do you want to get him under oath? You think we're fools? You want to get him under oath because you want to trap him into perjury. Well, we're not going to let you do that.
There's two separate issues, collusion and so-called obstruction. There was a report today that you said no questions on obstruction. Am I assuming here that your response to him was maybe a couple of written answers only?
Well, I can't tell you what it is yet because we haven't.
Sure you can.
No, I know I can, but I can't. Jay will get very angry at me. My co-counsel is much stricter about this than I am, so he'll get very angry, and Jane will. I'd love to tell you, but the reality is, he doesn't need to ask a single question on obstruction. He has all the answers. They're not going to change. The president's not going to change his testimony. So stop the nonsense. You are trying to trap him into perjury because you don't have a case.
Mr. Mayor, the Constitution, as our good friend Mark says, Mark Levin, is on the president's side. I agree it's illegitimate, has been. The double standard is so glaring. We have been pointing it out now every night and with new details every night. My question is, I wouldn't give him a thing. You don't owe him a thing. And if he wants a fight, then there's going to be a fight.
Well, we don't like to fight. You know that.
Mr. Mayor, I used to watch your press conferences. I disagree with that.
The reality is, the real story here is not that this case isn't going to fizzle. It's going to blow up on them. The real question is what we talked about before. There's a lot more to what they did that nobody knows about yet.
I know some of it.
A lot more to the obstruction of justice, to the collusion to the fake dossier.
Oh, I know.
To trying to bring Steele back in after he was completely discredited.
And then feed it to Mueller.
Yeah. And Mueller is going to have a lot to answer for.
Mr. Mayor.
I said a long time ago, the investigation here has to be in the investigators, because we can't let this happen again in American history. We may not have a president as strong as President Trump. A lesser president could have really been cracked by this.
Mueller, then you got Jeannie Ray, you got Andrew Weissman. Here's my question. We know the Department of Justice has absolutely denied congressional subpoenas. Now, I don't, because great a lawyer as you are, I don't think you'd get me out of trouble if I was ignoring a subpoena.
No, I don't think I could.
But the president has the power to go through these documents, through the FISA, and make it unredacted and let the American people see that the bulk of information was what Christopher Steele himself said wasn't verified.
That's something that, as his private lawyers, that he has to do with Emmett and his government lawyers. And he's going
Would
through
you
it right
suggest
now.
he should?
I can't tell you what I suggest. It's privileged.
Okay. Let me ask you about the FISA lies. The bulk of information the Grassley Graham memo says came from the phony dossier that Hillary paid for. That turns out to be a lie. The author of it says he can't corroborate it.
Right.
Now, here's my question. So they used it 4 separate times to spy on an American citizen, an opposition party candidate campaign associate, in the lead up to the election, after the election. Again, what if I lied to a judge? I wouldn't think of lying to a judge without getting my life in jail afterwards.
You'd be investigated for perjury. You'd be investigated for contempt. Your career would be ruined. Your life would be ruined. And I believe that when this plays out over the next year or two, it's not going to be about President Trump. It's going to get over with. It's going to be about all the things they did. You know how sometimes the cover-up is worse than the crime? In this case, the investigation was much worse than the no crime.
Mr. Mayor,
the president did nothing wrong.
My sources are telling me that when the American people get to the bottom of all of this, it will shock the heart, the soul, and the mind of any fair-minded American.
I think it's going to lead to some very strict, very big reforms, just like Watergate. It's a different kind of Watergate. It's on the side of the investigator.
Okay.
Corrupt investigations, through and through.
Why would you even consider a counterproposal?
When it's over with, I'll explain it to
you. Boy, I'm not getting anything out of you tonight. Good to see you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you. All right, when we come back, Andy McCarthy, Alan Dershowitz. Maybe I'll get more out of them. That's straight ahead.
They're much smarter than me.
All right, here with reaction to my interview with President Trump's attorney, the breaking news tonight, Rudy Giuliani, former assistant United States attorney for the all-powerful Southern District of New York, Fox News contributor Andy McCarthy. All right, this book right here, you see it on your screen. I have it in my hand. I finished it. Everybody should read this. It is amazing. This is not a political book. This is a book about the Constitution and about the rule of law, equal justice under the law. So many important issues that, regardless of political party, you should care about. The case against impeaching Donald Trump, Harvard Law professor Alan Dershowitz. I'm glad you got out of Martha's Vineyard alive. I'm glad to see.
I haven't gotten back yet.
Yeah, is that what it is? I'm assuming, I don't know, I don't have any information whatsoever, but I'm assuming the response today was, we'll respond with written answers to written questions. There is a precedent in the case of Ronald Reagan.
Well, if I were the president's lawyer, and I'm not, he has a terrific lawyer, Rudy Giuliani, and a great legal team, I would make Mueller an offer, to paraphrase The Godfather, that he couldn't accept. So that the president can then say...
You can't refuse, but anyway.
Well, no, let me tell you why. So the president can then say, I wanted to testify. I wanted to testify. It was Mueller who didn't let me testify. He turned it down. I think it's very important that the American public see who actually made the decision.
And that also
not to testify.
might actually help in an argument if there's a subpoena that ultimately arrives at the Supreme Court, correct?
I think so, and the Supreme Court is likely to divide the issue and say, look, you can't ask a president about his motives. Why did he fire Comey? You can't ask a senator or a congressman or a judge.
James Comey admitted he has the right to fire Comey.
Of course, so you can't ask about motive. But there's one question they can ask him, which would be a very difficult one. They can say, did you know about the meeting with your son in the office, the Trump Tower? Now, remember, the president's already said he didn't know about it. Cohen has said he did know about it.
I think under oath he said something different, though, according to the testimony that he originally gave. So I think there's conflicting answers.
But if the president says no and is truthful that he didn't know about it, Mueller would still have enough to charge him, because all you need is one person contradicting you. That's the perjury trap.
Yes, Sean, it's the big problem here, I think, is the burden is on the wrong side. You don't get to just, as a prosecutor, question the President of the United States. You wouldn't get to question a journalist. You would need to show that there was a serious crime, that you had the President implicated in somehow, and that he is the source of evidence that you need to make the case that you can't get from any other source.
So the Constitution is on the President's side?
Absolutely. The Constitution is on the President's side. The law is on the President's side. And, you just can't ask a president to explain why he took an action. Politics, you can ask him. His opponent can ask him.
He has the right to fire anybody.
And to pardon anybody. And to end any investigation.
By the way, we have Adam Schiff on tape talking to a Russian. Oh, really? Naked pictures? Putin saw them? Or the Russian lies that Hillary paid for. Right. You know what? Is that collusion? Is that conspiracy?
I don't want to see anybody investigated.
I know where you are.
Prosecuted.
By the way, you make a good...
Right, yeah.
No, but I just don't understand why at this point. Look, in 99% of investigations, investigative secrecy is a very important priority because most cases don't involve the President of the United States. But I think at this point, 2 years down the road, we're entitled to know if the special counsel has a case. And he should have to come forward and show what the crime is.
Are they going to push this to a subpoena?
I think they will, and I'm not sure they're going to win, because remember, Comey in his book says you never bring in a subject in an investigation unless you know exactly what he's going to say. He basically lays out the perjury trap theory, and that's what's going on.
But he's also the one that gives the most exculpatory evidence. On a couple of points, well, if somebody in my team, wanted Russia collusion, you got to do that. Let me ask you a question.
Exactly what
I have
the
a
president's
problem.
going to say, they shouldn't need to talk to him.
You look at how far this. A 2005 tax case, Manafort put the screws so you will sing or compose to get an impeachment or prosecution against Trump. Here's my question. Here's Gates, their star witness, is facing 290 years in jail. Perhaps. Oh, let's say 100. I'm thinking a lot of people would lie and take the bribe of a get-out-of-jail-free card and say whatever the prosecution wants.
Look, I can give you personal evidence of that. I've had so many clients who've told me they're prepared to compose, to make up a story to get out of jail. I won't let them do that.
I don't like the
because
practice,
I'm an
Andy.
ethical lawyer.
You're one
It's
of our
not a
great
good practice.
prosecutors. You did the blind shake for us. You did the World Trade Center for us.
Sean, in my office, under Rudy, and going forward, you would not have gotten a plea agreement like this. You would have had to plead guilty to everything.
Why would a juror believe a guy that's facing 100 years in jail gets a get-out-of-free card, but he has to testify?
It depends on how corroborated he is.
Right.
I mean,
without corroboration, this is a weak case. If it has corroboration, we'll have to see what corroboration
But these federal cases, 95% conviction rate, professors, that is scary.
That's because mostly they go after people where the evidence is overwhelming. But when you start thinking about a Manafort case, whereas the judge himself said they're not going after Manafort, they're going to try to squeeze him.
Tomi Lahren and Secretary Nielsen next. All right, recently, some of the left have been calling for ICE to be abolished. That means open borders. We sent our own Tommy Lahren to the liberal bastion of Portland, Oregon, the site of anti-ICE protests, to find out what people thought about illegal immigration and ICE. Let's take a look at this.
I don't know if you've seen in the last couple of weeks, but your city has been kind of home to some protesting, some controversy, a lot of surrounding your mayor and the Occupy ICE movement.
Right.
Familiar with any of that?
Yes.
What do you think about it?
I think that they should be able to protest.
Do you think that Portland's gotten more militant in the last year, 2 years?
I'll just say crazy.
Crazy?
We have a real problem with immigration. There's no simple answers here.
Do you think that abolishing ICE is a step in the right direction?
I think we have to look at our entire immigration policy. Our policy has failed.
Do you think that the protesting on either side has gotten out of hand?
For sure.
What do you think it's about? Do you think it's about really standing up for rights, or is it about getting attention? What do you think's the goal?
I don't know. I think people have like a lot of personal vendettas and want to be like personal warriors or something. And
social justice warriors, maybe?
For sure. On both sides, though.
Fox News? Yeah, you're a hater too.
But I'm nice.
Doesn't matter.
My name is Tommy.
Don't care.
You just don't like Fox News?
No, because Fox News is nothing but a bunch of capitalist lies.
Very hostile in Portland. I mean, I know there's a lot of out-of-towners, but even
you just saw, absolutely. Unfortunately, the only views that are being projected out here are extremist views.
Right.
And so you get extremist reactions. And thus why you get extreme behavior of people coming up to you and flipping you off.
Do you think a lot of the people in Portland are misinformed as to what ICE actually does?
They just think about the kids coming over with their mom or whatever. They don't think about the corruption that's coming in, the drug dealers.
Do you plan to go to any of the Occupy ICE protests?
Depending on what my work schedule looks like.
All right.
Liberal cities on the West Coast, they aren't the only places protecting illegal immigrants. Listen to what the governor of New York